Robin Charbit, and I've been asked to share some thoughts on peace. Well, very simply, I think peace is one of the human experiences we go through in life. We have many different experiences, and at a simplest level, peace is one of those experiences we go through. Or said another way, it's one of the divine gifts we get from being human. And all of life's experiences are divine gifts. And we don't have to ask for them. We don't have to do anything. They're inherent and innate in being human. Now, the other thing that peace means to me is that it seems to be a state that I can live in, and from which I seem to have effortless access to a whole host of deeply valuable capacities. And when I say access, I mean I'm present to, they seem available, they show up. And those capacities are, and this is not exclusive, but those capacities are clarity of thought. So it seems very easy for me to think clearly, independent of what else is going on. I seem to be deeply connected to my humanity, so love, empathy, etc. I seem to have insight, the new thinking I would need in that moment. And I also have perspective. I can see the situation for what it is. And then I'm not distracted when I'm at peace. I seem to be present to whatever is happening. And I'm in what you might call a psychologically neutral state. I'm not reacting, I'm not suffering, I'm not in a state of heightened negative emotion. I'm awake, I'm aware, I feel the world, I feel the situation, and I seem to be able to relate to what's happening, but I'm not being dragged anywhere in my mind. So that's what peace means to me. That's how I would describe being in peace. Well, I think I really alluded to that. It's an innate capacity that we are born with. It's who we are when our psychological system isn't troubled or disturbed. We find ourselves there. It's not something we do. It's not something we get given. We find ourselves there. And the access to that, or the availability of peace, is the consequence of deep forces running through our mind. And these are profound forces. And they're creating and shaping our moment-to-moment experience. So they create the experience of peace, they create the moments of suffering, they create the moments of joy. So those forces are the sole thing that is creating peace in the moment. Well, what seems to work best for me is to remember that life is an inside-out experience. And by that I mean these forces behind my mind or running my mind are creating my moment-to-moment experience. The outside world is not doing that. My perception, even my ability to see the outside world, and definitely my ability to experience it, are all being constructed in my mind. Now, this means I can be in one of three different states. I can be in a state where I'm completely unaware of what I just described. Now, I can be happy, unhappy, but if at that point you asked me why I was the way I am, I would point to something outside of me as the cause. Then a second state I find myself in is where I might not be having the experience I want, but I'm aware the problem is on the inside, not on the outside. And so even though I'm not deeply, deeply seeing the true nature of life, I'm at least aware of where the issue is or what's going on. And then the third mode I find myself in is one where I'm completely awake to the inside-out nature of life. I'm completely awake to these divine forces behind life creating my experience. And I find myself with all those qualities that I mentioned earlier. And the way it looks to me is that when I'm in that third state, I'm awake to and aware of the deep intelligence that's flowing through life, that's flowing through me, that's living life through me and through everything else. And then all is well. I realize that all is well because it's divinely intelligent and it's perfect the way it is, even though it might not be the circumstances or the preferences that I would want. It's almost as if I'm in a world where Robin's preferences are secondary or tertiary, and they're barely on my mind. So this means that, if it was not for my thinking in that moment, that's where I would be. If I was not attached to my preferences, I would be at peace. And I can give you a very stark example of this. A few years ago, my mother, who lives nearby, was hit by a car crossing the street in front of her house and ended up in hospital with in a coma, head trauma, fractured pelvis, broken bones. So in a very, very bad state. She was at the time 83 years old. And before you wonder, she made a complete recovery. It was amazing. Anyway, when I arrived in the hospital, having heard the news, they sent me to the trauma ICU. That's not a post-operative ICU where people recover from operations. This is where they bring people who are seriously injured. There were liquids on the floor, there were sirens going off, people rushing around with emergency equipment. This was not a quiet place. And as I sat there with my mother, who I could tell was seriously injured, I was completely at peace. Now, I was not in shock. I know what that is like. But if I looked inside, I seemed to have all the thinking I needed in that moment. So I did not have joy, but I had peace, I had gratitude, I had clarity of thought. I seemed to have the perspective I needed. And even though I had no ability to control the situation, no ability to do anything about what was happening, I was completely settled and open to whatever the universe was going to show up next. So, bad circumstances, but I was at peace. Now, I might have used the word access. It's really not something you access. Peace is who we are if we're not misunderstanding how life is working. And it's a moment-to-moment thing. And even though I've been interested in this understanding for many, many years, I still forget. And then I remember, and then I forget. So it's a moment-to-moment thing. And the more we're remembering in the moment what's actually going on, the more likely we are to find ourselves at peace. Now, the last question which was asked, which I think was interesting, was why would peace be a good option in challenging times? I think a better question is, why not have peace all the time or more of the time? Why not just, why just in challenging times? So for me, the value of being at peace is that when we're psychologically settled, we're more awake to, more conscious of the deep intelligence that is running life. We see what's going on, we see the flow of intelligence, and we seem better informed by it. Now, this makes it more likely for us to have insight. And insight is a new thought that changes how things look. And when I'm at peace, I seem to have the ability to have two different types of insights. One is that all is well, everything will be okay, and what's happening is fine. So an insight that has me be at peace with whatever's going on, as in the example with my mother. Or I have an insight about what I might do intelligently about the situation in front of me, or not do about the situation. So that's why, for me, accessing peace is really essential to living a full, deep, joyous, and productive life. I hope this was helpful. Bye.